I'll start again. It's a good start with the microphone. Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Andrew Brown, so I will be chairing this morning's session, Monday, the 7th of August, of the Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Party. I think we've all attended before, but so first things first, if I can go to each of our officers to introduce themselves, starting on the right with Ian.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Ian Withington, the Planning Policy Team Leader.
Morning, I'm Caroline Dodden. I'm a Senior Planning Officer in the Policy Team.
Matthew Gatteridge, Senior Planning Officer in the Planning Policy Team.
Russell Williams, I'm the Council's new Assistant Director for Planning. This is tail end of week 1, so I'm not planning on contributing a great deal, but looking forward to seeing how it all works.
And to my left.
Lauren Gregory, Democratic Services Officer.
So the members are sat in front of me. The members are those who will be making the decisions this morning. I'd like to welcome members of the public who may be viewing on eDemocracy. And I don't think we've got any speakers this morning we know about. I think we're all aware of the fire alarm drill. If it goes off, it's for real. And for the benefit of everyone, you'll be pleased to hear that I have switched my mobile phone off, and would invite everyone to either switch theirs or mute them, please, for courtesy and the good running of the meeting. Now, this room is booked apparently by the business planning team for midday, so I'm rather hoping that we won't be more than a couple of hours this morning. But if we do get to 11:30, I'll be asking if we need a comfort break. I'm hoping we won't get much beyond that. Right, so to the agenda, if I can start with apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Peter Fisher, Councillor Luke Patterson, Councillor Jeremy Punchard and Councillor John Toy, with Councillor Harry Blathwaite present as a substitute.
Right. It's probably got something to do with the holiday season, no doubt. Do we have any public questions? Item 2?
None received.
So item 3 is the minutes. I'd just like to thank Councillor Gary Bull for stepping in and chairing the last meeting. Thank you very much. I'd like to put that on the record. So referring to the minutes, I'm not going to go through them page by page. I'm assuming that everybody has read them. Do we have any comments about inaccuracies or otherwise? Councillor Heinrich.
One typo on page 6 under clause 8. I think the word should be compromise solution, not compromised. Thank you.
That's very observant of you, Councillor Heinrich. Thank you very much. You people normally leave that sort of thing to me, but so I'm quite happy that you're following in spirit of that sort of thing. So could I have a proposer, please, for the minutes? Councillor Heinrich, and a seconder, Councillor Beattie. Thank you very much. And all those in favour, hands raised. Thank you very much for that. Sign those at some point, Lauren. Right. Any items of urgent business? Don't believe we have any, do we?
There are none.
No. So item 5, declarations of interest, pecuniary or otherwise. Councillor Beattie.
Non-pecuniary interest in Holt Neighbourhood Plan, obviously, as I'm a member of Holt Town Council.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Varley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's just important that I note that for item 7 of the agenda, I'm the local member for Horning.
Okay.
Ditto.
And Councillor Blathwaite.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that on item 7, I am the representative on the Broads Authority, and I am chair of the Broads Authority Planning Committee. Thank you very much.
So you're particularly busy, aren't you, then, in that regard? Thank you. Any other interests to declare? No. Very good, thank you very much. So we move swiftly to item 6 on the agenda, which is the Holt Neighbourhood Plan report on pages 15 to 62. We have the actual referendum version at page 23 attached to the papers, which makes interesting reading. So if I can defer to Officer Ian Withington.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as Andrew says, this starts on page 15 of the report pack. The report asks members to endorse the making of a Holt neighbourhood plan to make it legally part of the development plan for the parish of Holt. It has been through consultation, it's been through referendum. 552 votes supported it. Turnout, well, that was 80% of those that voted on the day voted in favour of it. As such, we have, or the council has a legal duty to bring that plan into effect unless it considers it breaches European Union obligations, which I can advise it does not. So I don't intend to go through it. It is a simple case of asking you if you would like us to make that plan, and that will go through to Cabinet and then issue the relevant decision notices at an officer level.
Thank you. Yeah, so really all we're doing is ratifying this and making sure that it goes through the proper process and abides, as it were, by the statutory provisions and requirements of the Localism Act to what we call make the plan. So we've got before I open it up to comment, we've got the 3 recommendations. Firstly, that the vote has been taken, then to issue a decision statement. Following on from that decision statement, if we recommend it, which I hope we will, it's then to make the necessary amendments to any records in terms of, you know, boundaries and things like that, I presume.
Yes, we have to amend the policies map to signify that there's a neighbourhood plan. It's simple as that, so it comes up on constraints when we do planning searches.
Yeah. So constraints are basically what a planning officer has to look at in decide, you know, dealing with a planning application, just so that people know what that is. So if I can open to comment, we have the member for Holt in our audience today, and I'm looking at you, Councillor Beattie. There's nothing.
We'd obviously like it ratified as soon as possible, so we can get on the same as yourselves. I don't think there's anything which I would class as being controversial in amongst that. We just want to get things done.
Thank you very much for that. So I would propose the recommendations as set out in the report. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Heinrich, and a seconder? Councillor Hankins, and if we can vote, all hands up, all those in favour. That's unanimous. All. Thank you very much. Right, so we move to the next item, which is item 7, and that's Horning Narcas. Got to say Narcas because I'm being polite. Would updated joint position statement on pages 63 to 94 of your papers. Who would like to take this? Is it you again? Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the purpose of this report is to update members with regard the joint position of Horning Knackerswood water recycling centres and to seek delegate authority to sign the updated position statement, which is attached. This will aid decision-making on development proposals in Horning and provide clarity on the position. Members, especially those on the development committee, will recall there is currently an embargo on new homes in the Horning catchment area. Primarily because Horning Wastewater Recycling Centre doesn't have the capacity to accommodate further foul flows, and flows remain significantly above the permitted Environment Agency's limit and license. So the opportunity, if you like, of reviewing this joint position statement has come about because Anglian Water issued a statement of fact last year and withdrew from the existing process. I can say that since the original joint position statement was signed, Anglian Water have taken a number of investigations. They've understood, in order to understand why the water recycling centre is receiving excessive flows. And they've concluded that unstable ground conditions in the area cause structural failings in the pipe network and the public sewage network, and it also affects privately owned drainage networks. That, combined with the high water table, frequent overtopping, and high levels of groundwater, infiltrations and inundations to private and public foul water systems at multiple points, basically increase the flows to approximately 200% above their licensed amount. That's quite significant. Anglian Water have concluded there's no single engineering solution that can be provided by them, and issued their statement of fact, which is attached in the Appendix E to the report. And they formally withdrew from that position. Since then, we've been working with the Broads and the Environment Agency to update the position and to seek what we can do and how we can eventually remedy this situation. And those discussions have included Anglian Water as well. The bottom line is that the council, there is a real risk of increased nutrient loading downstream of the river courses on nationally significant and locally significant environments, including the Broad Special Area of Conservation, SPAs, and the water quality. And the council has a legal duty with regard to main priorities and objectives of those conservation objectives, essentially. So the bottom line is that the EA will still object to development proposals. Their Anglian Water will still invest and are looking for solutions, but they will not do so alone. In fact, they're working with the Norfolk Strategic Flood Alliance to identify other areas of investment and basically joint solutions where possible. And they've set aside, I've got 5.2 million is set aside in their long-term plan for improved capacity within that water recycling centre. There's more detail on the actual proposals where that money will go to in our IDP, which of course is published for the examination. EA maintain their objection, and Anglian Water consider the settlement unsustainable for long-term growth. It effectively means that there should be no net increase in water flows within that network to Knackerswood recycling centre. So before you is a recommendation to seek the authority to officers to sign that joint position statement so we can provide updated guidance to our developers and our colleagues in development management on how to address and advise potential developers in that area. And it seeks delegated authority to do so through the Assistant Director of Planning.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Ian. Well, just when we thought that natural England and nutrient neutrality was the only game in town, we have yet another constraint in Anglian Water's assessment of this of this area of the district. Slightly surprised there wasn't sort of a reference to nutrient neutrality aspects in the position statement. There might be a very good reason for that. I don't know.
I believe it's actually outside the nutrient neutrality zone, believe it or not.
Is it?
Um,
Well, there you go. I wouldn't put money on that. Yes. Yeah. So really what this does is just update what we already knew from the assessment in 2017. That's correct, isn't it? So we're really just sort of, 5 years on, looking at it, reviewing it and saying not a great deal's changed. Is that right?
Yes, basically, we signed a joint position statement in 2017. Anglian Water have now withdrawn from that statement, so we've taken the opportunity to revise it between ourselves, the Broads, and the EA. And a similar report is going to the Broads Development Committee imminently, I believe.
Okay. Councillor Varley, I would imagine that you would like to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I have a fair amount to say. I think first of all, though, I would just like to say thank you to Officer Withington for his work on this report and engagement in this matter. This is a very important issue, and this newly drafted document, the joint position statement, will continue to have significant impact on the community of Horning. Horning Parish is an important part of North Norfolk in so many different aspects. The document does note that Horning has a high water environment, which allows a good natural habitat for plants and animals and improves the quality of life for local residents. Now, we must ensure that we do everything we can to protect this. We don't want development to have a detrimental impact on this matter. The joint position statement from 2017 set out a clear picture of the issue and the intention for Anglian Water to do investigatory works. Now, I do thank them for everything they've done. In their 2022 statement of fact document, it coherently states the amount of comprehensive investigatory works they have undertaken. However, this matter seems to have no end in sight, and I am disappointed that Anglian Water have pulled out of the original 2017 joint policy statement. But it is encouraging to hear from Officer Withington regarding the £5 million worth of investment, but we need to know specifics of this and, of course, a time scale. This redrafted statement continues with the policy that no development which has implications on increasing capacity at the WRC must take place. This is going to have a significant impact on our ability as a planning housing authority to ensure that we have new, affordable and social housing in this parish. I am concerned by the implications this will have on the community, on families who can't live in the village they grew up in due to soaring house prices and the issues relating to second holiday homes. This policy also includes those very basic householder applications, which would want to include an increase in a WC capacity. As local member, I've spoken with planning officers on varied applications in Horning, and the position has to be no. This is, of course, necessary but frustrating, and I am concerned that this will allow our planning department to come under fire from those applicants. I do feel Anglian Water and the Environmental Agency must proactively engage in this matter and work together to find a solution. And, hearing what Officer Withington has said, I am encouraged by this, but we need to really tackle this once and for all. And I am concerned that in the meantime, Horning will just continue to be forgotten. No significant development will take place. And as a result, our community will dwindle. So that's all I have to say on this matter, Mr. Chairman, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barley. Councillor Bathwaite.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that the River Ant is an important river regarding national recreation. It is a river where there is both involuntary and voluntary immersion, human immersion. The River Ant has a water recycling treatment centre at its head at Stalham, and also Knackerswood draining into it at its lower end. So it also drains into the lower Bure. It is important that this river is kept as clean as possible, and that isn't happening at the present. And we, as a council, have a responsibility to do all in our power to keep the quality of the water in the River Ant and the lower Bure as best it can be. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comment? Councillor Holiday and then Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for this excellent report, Ian. I just feel Anglia Water are getting off very lightly here. I don't see much enthusiasm. This is very much a we can't do it sort of report that I'm not surprised, but I'm very disappointed that they're not taking more responsibility, and they've been quite good. In Clyde, we had a problem with our sewage works, and it was over capacity all the time, and we complained about the tankering. This is a very small scale example, but they can't put it in the water into the Glaven because it's not allowed, so they have to tank it away. And we had them put in another treatment tank, and the problem's gone away actually. So you can, with pressure, make changes. And I think there's not enough pressure. Well, not enough pressure going on, but certainly these guys have got to be held to the fire on this, because this is, it's everyone else's fault and it's not ours. And I think there really has to be some pressure on them. And I was just thinking, there are other places where this sort of problem's happening. I looked at the Everglades, which of course, unfortunately, it's government owned, so that's a completely different thing. And Venice, of course, they just put the sewage into the canals, which is a bit not what we want. But the Somerset Levels have got the same problems. And there's a webinar a couple of weeks ago about it. And so there are other people dealing with the same problems. And if can't we look for innovative solutions elsewhere and expect that our water company would do the same? I don't think that's too much to ask, really. And the other thing about the investment is when is it and what's it going to be for? Because they've got these 5-year plans. Is it a very general £5 million investment in the area, or is it specifically to correct these pipes that are faulty? So there's quite a lot of questions, but very poor response from Anglia Water, very disappointing.
Yes, I'm not sure whether we can push back. We can push back. Yeah, certainly.
In terms of the investment, there is some more detail in the instruction delivery plan. The tranche of investment, from memory, I think was 2023 5-year plan onwards. It might be 2025. Sorry, I can't quite remember, but it's in there. That long-term investment plan, I think, is still waiting to be signed off by Ofwat. So it is in there. There are some specific measures, but I can say that I kind of agree with the feedback you're giving on Anglian Water, but they also, from their perspective, have done. Say they've gone further and beyond their remit. I know there's been a series of illegal connections to the foul water, which they've tried to negotiate and remedy. There is There was even an illegal pumping station, which they are seeking to dismantle and divert flows out of the flows and back into the river. And it's complicated because it's on third-party land. And this is all down on Ferry Road. And then they're working with private connections on Ferry Lane, I think, to identify collapses underground and remedy those pipes. So they have this fund, and it is an ongoing one. And the pressure from that we can give with my counterpart at the Broads in planning policy is to continue these negotiations with the Environment Agency and Anglian Water, where there's a sub-team, but specifically look after the Horning area. But the wider environment, yes, through that Flood Alliance is something that sits outside policy, but this council is a member of, and I believe there are more engagement from the local community and pressures there to continue and target that investment. I'm hoping that in the LERD bill there will be requirement for investment along the lines of nutrient neutrality, and that will force the companies to invest, and the technological advancement to remove the nutrients at source would enable the license to go up. I think that's where the solution possibly lies, as well as reducing the flows, but only time will tell on that.
Yeah, so this will be reviewed, what, in 12 months' time? I think the report says it's reviewed every 12 months, is that right? One of the amendments to it?
I think, yes,
Or is that just our position statement?
I think in the
I suppose
position
it
statement,
means-
there's a commitment to review it
Yeah. So
every 12 months.
in effect, not a great deal may happen over the next 12 months. Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. Seems to me what we're in is the usual position that Anglian Water has failed to invest in its facilities. Same time, it's chucking money at its foreign investors. Our money should be spent locally. It's just disappearing to the Ontario Teachers Pensions Funds and various vulture capitalist funders. I'm not sure what we can do about that unless government actually gets its act together and brings water back under state control. So we can actually have some clear direction and not funding foreigners. We need investment, not only in Horning, but we're going to need it in North Walsham if the developments there are going to be properly dealt with. We're putting over 2,000 houses in North Walsham. I very much doubt whether a sewage plant designed to cater for less than the current population is ever going to be adequate. No indication of investment there. We have to bring Anglian Water to account. They must provide the infrastructure everywhere that we need to develop. And I think we really need to drag them before review and scrutiny again to start explaining themselves yet again. Thank you.
Well, I certainly know from experience on the development committee that Anglian Water will support major development applications in the sense that they guarantee connections. But I'm afraid the reality, the experience is different on occasions in a number of areas where the capacity is not what you would expect it to be. Councillor Dixon, who's been patiently waiting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not to take anything away from the points that have been made, I do think that there is some context here of a more strategic nature that we can't ignore. I've spent a good few years actually looking into problems of this ilk, because just along the river from Horning is a place called Houghton. And it too suffers the same kind of problems. And I have spent a lot of time working with Anglian Water to understand what the problem is and to look at solutions to those problems. And yes, you can technically solve them by engineering means, but it requires a level of investment of a huge proportion. And when you look at the other problems that we have in terms of water quality and the water cycle that we have to deal with, you've got to make some hard choices, some hard decisions on where that investment goes in. Because there's no point, and I know that I have spent quite a bit of money in Horning to try to address particularly a lot of the leaky laterals, but it's an ongoing process that Mother Nature will continue to present ongoing work. And we just can't lose sight of that. We have to bear that in mind. I'm not saying that we shouldn't say a pushback, but we just have to be realistic. I don't think Horning has got quite the same number of options that are open, but in Houghton, I can tell you that the only solution is to put another pipeline in that bypasses the problem. But all of these areas they are different in nature. The problem is different, the solution is different. And the understanding, the public understanding and our understanding, it's important that we don't lose sight of the big picture here. And although we can criticize what Anglian Water and other water companies have done, I don't think that we can rely on the grass being greener on the other side, because I don't believe for a moment that this particular problem would be any different were there to be different arrangements with regard to water companies. It is a fact that we choose to develop in certain areas where the ground properties are particularly challenging, and if you want to put in a system that you continually circulate the River Bure and the River Ant through the water system, then that's absolutely fine, but you won't achieve anything. That's the nature of the problem. There's so much groundwater, river water getting into the system that for whatever capacity you put into Knackers Wood or indeed at Beela, you won't defeat it. And particularly under heavy rainfall conditions, it becomes particularly, well, it's not achievable. So I just caution our expectations, and we have to be a part, I think, of that bigger picture, those bigger picture solutions. So when the investment decisions are made, I think we have to have an appreciation and would want to see the bigger problems not ignored at the expense of the smaller problems, which will not necessarily deliver a lasting solution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Blathwaite.
Just to say, unfortunately, I can remember the construction of Knackers Wood and main drainage coming to Horning. And it was agreed then, generally, and this was before Anglian Water, that Knackers Wood would be inadequate. And so it is proved.
Yeah, I mean, I've had discussions with Anglian Water down the years, and I can't understand why making an unauthorised surface water intrusion into foul sewer or whatever isn't a criminal offence. And certainly Anglian Water operatives who I have spoken to would welcome some government intervention on this, and that it be made a criminal offence. That would no doubt help at the margins, but yeah, I mean, the investment apparently comes from Abu Dhabi, Canada, and Australia. And I just wonder how many of those investors have ever been to Norfolk, let alone to Horning. Maybe it's not strictly necessary, but I don't know what we need to do to sort of message that we are not satisfied with this, Ian, as regards the recommendation. Is it within the remit to do that, or are we just noting this position statement?
At this point in time, it's noting that position statement and giving us the authority to, as officers, to sign it and publicise that position. Obviously, I'm in constant communication with my officer, sorry, my counterpart in the Broads, who they also have a keen interest in ensuring development takes place. They're on their next generation of reviewing their local plan and are wrestling with the issues of how they can deliver growth in their small area of the Broads in relation to this issue. To say that a lot of the issues are actually fall within the Broads area in terms of inundation and broken pipes along Ferry Road and Ferry Lane and so forth. So they're very keen to look at that. But I think, yes, we will continue to talk with the Environment Agency and pressurize them also to look at technical solutions and invest. And there may well be something that they can do.
Right. Councillor Varley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to propose this recommendation. I am a realist and, I'm aware of the fact that for the time being, this statement needs to be put into effect to ensure that, development does not have detrimental impact on this special river.
Proposed by Councillor Varley, seconded by Councillor Brathwaite. All those in favour? Unanimous again. Thank you very much. Right, so moving on to agenda item 8. This is weight to be given to the emerging local plan. A meaty agenda item, I think. It's over to you, Ian, again.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report starts on page 95 of your report pack. And details that there is an opportunity for the council to now consider the policies of the emerging plan as a material consideration in the determination of planning applications alongside the adopted development plan, core strategy, and seeks your instruction. The situation now is that limited weight is given to the emerging plan as a whole, and policies on a case-by-case basis where they are used by developers' justification. As detailed in paragraph 2.3, the framework advises that local planning authorities may give weight to relevant policies in an emerging plan due to the stage of production. With the more advanced, the greater the weight could be given, the extent to which there are unresolved objections, with less significant the unresolved objection, the greater weight can be given, and the degree of consistency with relevant policies to the framework. The closer the policies are to the framework, the greater weight can be given. Now, the report in front of you reviews each policy solely in terms of paragraph 48 and these criteria, and concludes in Appendix 1 that there are 30 policies in the emerging plan which could now be given weight and used in the consideration and determination of applications alongside the existing development plan. There's a further 3 where we could give partial weight to. It would remain up to the individual officer to conclude the appropriate balance in judgment and based on the circumstances of each application, and presented in any determination report to the relevant committee in conjunction with the core strategies policies. The limited weight to 3 policies is due to the fact they set out a strategic position, which are in the main contested, and there are substantive objections which could also challenge the principle of the approach, which sets out in the policy rather than the less significant objections, which generally focus on wording of the policies, or rather than the wider approach. The identification of spatial strategy, housing and employment numbers, the distribution, viability concerns, identification of countryside policy areas. They are major strategic parts of the plan, and they are parts of the plan where there are significant objections. Officers believe that the plan is now at a significantly advanced stage in which to seek members' views and to a certain extent your wishes on the level of weight the council may wish to apply to the emerging plan in decision making. The plan's been in the public domain for over 18 months. It's undergone significant consultation and was submitted for examination 2 months ago. In conjunction with the submission, there's sustainability report, habitat regulation reports, which are not contested, and a detailed review of soundness and legal compliance, which utilizes the Planning Advisory Service check sheets, which demonstrates significant conformity to the framework, and they are submitted documents as well. Some policies guide development and address new areas of planning, which have subsequently been enacted through law, such as biodiversity net gain, which is coming into effect in November this year for major sites and April 2024 for small sites. So we have a policy in that local plan which brings forward that position and provides guidance for officers on how that should be implemented. There is a choice. You can choose not to go with officers' recommendations, and through discussion in understanding the risks, seek changes to Appendix 1. Or you can decide not to place any weight on the emerging local plan at this stage and continue to rely on the core strategy and adopted development plan. We just merely think it is an appropriate time to seek your guidance and to provide some clarity to officers and developers at this moment. If you choose the latter, then in effect only limited weight could be attached to emerging policies on a case-by-case basis, as per paragraph 48. And those applications that are now starting to use emerging policies for justification would continue, or officers would have to continue to seek our guidance from the policy team on the level and nature of objection every single time that is adopted. And that's obviously a resource implication for the policy team. I will issue one caveat. If members decide to give weight to the various policies and go along with the recommendation, there will need to be a transition period. It can't be something that will just happen overnight. My colleagues at management level and of course in association with the Assistant Director of Planning will have to discuss its implementation and the transition to those. There was be a period where the system or the planning system internally will need to be updated. Officers will need to be briefed. Obviously, there is a requirement for member training and officer training, and also time needed to inform developers of the subtle changes in emphasis in policies, and a decision would have to be taken on how to deal with applications that are already in the system. So it won't happen overnight, is what I'm saying, but it would set the process in motion if that was your wish. I don't intend to go through the report. It does detail the position on each individual policy, which will form, which gives a review of each policy and provides, I think, a good position in relation to the nature of the objection, and then it is all summarized in that Appendix 1 with the conclusion. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for putting this this detailed report together. I've just got one question for the time being. If a local authority, local planning authority is unable to demonstrate a 5-year land supply, what effect, just so that I can be clear on this, what effect would that have on the recommendations that are before us? Are we sort of almost predetermined, and would we have to rely on our current core strategy in that situation, or can we consider other options? I'm just a little uncertain in my own mind about that.
I think what this report is seeking to do is not to take that into consideration. It is, do you want to give weight to it or not? The fact that we would end up, if we're in that situation where we cannot deliver a 5-year land supply, the relevant policies here would still apply. But what we are saying is that the spatial strategy and the overall housing numbers are contested with the local plan. So you should not be reliant upon those policies that would do that. And therefore the presumption in favour of sustainable development in the NPPF would still apply. I don't think you can manufacture a 5-year land supply based on this.
Right, okay. Yeah. I think we need a doctorate in planning to wade through this, to be perfectly honest. It's an interesting report, this. So I throw it open to the floor. Any comments from any members? Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very much in favour of this. We've had long arguments at Development Committee in the past where the policies that are emerging have been taken into account by developers. We're making judgments based on something that's now getting on 15 years old. Things have, and things have moved on. And a lot of the NPPF has moved on. We're having to work around that often rather than the original policies. Secondly, I think a steady transition will make life easier once the plan is approved. If we're halfway there, the last steps on those contested areas, once they're decided, will be relatively easy. So I think it takes some of the load off the planning department if they've had a longer time scale. And I'm assuming we're not going to be bringing any of this in until first quarter next year. I'm thinking through past experience how long these things take. So if we can do it, let's start moving. I think everybody will know where they stand by the time everything is fully in place in 12-18 months.
Thank you. Thank you. Any Councillor Dix?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I take the same view, actually. A huge amount of effort has been invested in preparing this new local plan over many years. And it really doesn't, I think, it's not one of those things that you should suddenly switch over and everything changes. That's not like that in reality. The reality is that with that work that's been done, that work should be carried forward and should be progressively embraced in future decisions. There will be certainly what I would call the big ticket items in the new local plan will be, I'm sure, subject to, the planning inspectorate examination, and some of those may not emerge intact, we don't know, but a lot of the work that's been done I think is pretty logical. It's one of those things where it should evolve progressively. So I have no hesitation at all that this in principle is the right way to go. Thank you.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. Any other members? Any thoughts on this? I'm just wondering how on appeal an inspector would view our application of policy from that perspective, and possibly also from a planning officer's perspective, whether they would prefer some sort of evolutionary change to take account of the local plan policies. It would certainly seem to me to be appropriate that we make a start on this, providing obviously we deliver some guidance to our planning officers to assist them. And Appendix 1 is useful in that regard. I see there's only, I think I counted them up, there's only 19 policies where there is no weight being applied. So the vast majority of them would be considered if we accept the recommendation and decision making. So there's quite a commitment there to update our planning officers to be fair to them. And it's often said in this working party that our core strategy, although it's dated back in, as commencing in 2008, in terms of its effectiveness and its relevance 15 years on, it does a very, very good job. I mean, we know this because we don't receive a great deal of criticism when we go to appeals. So we know that the inspectors generally recognise that that our current local plan is a good one, even in even today's terms. But that said, I think I personally do favour this recommendation, which is, as soon as reasonable practical weight is given, the emerging local plan and emerging plan policies in line with paragraph 48 of the National Planning Policy Framework as detailed in Appendix 1, which seems to have had a lot of work put into it, Ian, I would say. Have you been burning some midnight oil on this?
It is a combination, I would say, of work across the team, which we've worked extremely hard on, and an assessment of that, of the level and significance of objections and conformity with the NPPF. When we produced those Schedule 3s, if you remember, and Schedule 4s of the minor amendments, it all stems back from them. So we have been working on this for a considerable amount of time, and it's very much a team effort to produce this.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Councillor. If I could just chip in, for those that aren't aware, I've actually been a planning officer here now for the last 6 months on the development management side. And whilst I haven't been involved in the production of this report, I would echo the comments of others that from a case officer perspective, having some simple clarity would be helpful. And it would generally be helpful to the outside world to have some simple clarity from the council as to which policies and to what extent it is looking to give weight. Now, clearly, you can make it astonishingly complicated here. Mr. Withington could have come up with a 27-point scale or something equivalent, but to me, you could argue a little bit as to which should be in what, but the 3-point scale seems quite pragmatically sensible. The observations about transition and how to bring this in are interesting, I think. Certainly my intention as your new assistant director would be to report something similar to this paper to the development committee at some point as well, because it's not just the case officer. It will also be an interesting challenge for committee, and I'm not meaning that disrespectfully, to work out how to use this, because some of our new policies are very similar to some of the existing policies. Some of the new policies are, going to exaggerate here, completely the opposite to the existing. That's not entirely true, but there's kind of a comparable with existing. So my intent, subject to discussions with the chair, is either in the September or the October cycle to effectively table something at development committee and then for officers to start utilising it thereafter. The alternative, as Mr. Withington said, of sort of not doing anything doesn't get the plan to cease to exist. It's still there. And to me, that would provide greater uncertainty and unhelpfulness than having something like this in place, and probably subject to lots of other people's views, but with a date when it starts. But it will evolve a bit over time, and I have a sneaking suspicion we'll be coming back to this topic more than once we know the matters the inspector's interested in and all that kind of thing over the course of the coming months. So as a newcomer, it seems as a strategy eminently sensible to me, but I am keen that development committee also see it.
Yes, thank you for, yes, yeah, point very well made. Members on the development committee will need to be au fait as well if we're going to maintain our outstanding record of winning appeals. Yeah, will we have a mechanism to review if we resolve as the recommendation stands, how the department is coping with the transition? How will we know how it's working in practice and how it's being applied, and if it's being applied correctly, will it be brought back into the working party as a review report or something of that sort?
I think it's a case of monitoring the situation with officers and officer feedback through the development management team and assistant director, and answering those questions or seeking to answer the questions as they arrive, any difficulties within it. As a policy team, we can advise the level of objection, we can advise the conformity, we can have that work. It's just a case of, yes, keeping a watching brief on it, if you like, in terms of the emerging examination and feedback from the inspector, if you like. But as Russell says there, a lot of the policies are similar to the core strategy. They're just updating the language used, and they're aligning it better with the more up-to-date evidence that is in existence. So it's just completing the circle. There are some new ones, of course, and the larger strategic ones are those ones which we're saying you shouldn't go there, you shouldn't be applying weight, because they are the fundamental in principle objections which will be resolved through examination.
Well, I would urge members to keep in their pocket, particularly when they're going to the development committee, pages 99 to 111, because it's a handy sort of, key facts walk through the emerging policies. Certainly easier to carry than the whole draft new emerging local plan, and of course the appendix as well, if this goes forward today, in relation to the weight that's given, whether it's significant weight, less than significant, or no weight whatsoever, in terms of decision making, which will be set out in reports, won't it, from officers at any rate?
Yes, so the way it should
to
work
guide
with
us.
any officer's report
Yeah.
would provide the balanced discussion between the core
Yeah.
strategy
Yeah.
and the emerging policy, and conclude appropriately in relation to that application. So
Yeah.
it obviously depends on the nature of an application, but what we are saying here is there's a clear indication of which policies that they should be talking about, if they are relevant for that application, of course.
Yeah.
So it'll be put before you in the officer's report.
Do we need to give it a name, Appendix 1, or will it always be referred to as Appendix 1?
I'm sure we'll be issuing some guidance, including this within it.
Yeah, we'll be having a vote on what it might be called. Right, okay, well, unless anyone else has got any comments they wish to make, I think we can probably move to a vote on this. So the recommendation is as printed on page 95, which I referred to earlier. Do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Varley, and a seconder. Councillor Dixon. Thank you very much. So all those in favour? Excellent. Unanimous. Right, thank you very much. That's went better than I thought it would, to be honest. Right, agenda item 9, which I believe is adoption of coastal adaptation supplementary planning document, which we might remember was discussed in some detail back in November last year, wasn't it? Over to you, Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So it's page 121 of your reports pack. The report recommends the adoption of the Coastal Adaptation Supplementary Planning Document, which I'll call SPD, if that's all right. Firstly, I'd like to do a brief recap for really just to say the purpose of this document for the benefit of any new members, and then to just summarise what's happened since it came to the Working Party last November. So the purpose of this Coastal Adaptation SPD is to build upon the Statement of Common Ground on Coastal Zone Planning that was formally signed by Norfolk and Suffolk coastal authorities in 2018 by seeking to provide consistent planning guidance through a whole coast approach for the area of coast, which you can see up on the screen, which is covered by the Coastal Partnership East team from Holcombe in North Norfolk round to Langard Point in Felixstowe. So a joint steering group was set up between the participating authorities and led by East Suffolk Council, whose members have collectively drafted the final document before you. The SPD has been through 2 rounds of public consultation. The first one took the form of a questionnaire, really just to get some ideas to inform the content and scope of the document. This worked up draft SPD was reported to the Working Party in November last year. The second public consultation took place between January and March this year. There was 52 respondents who made a total of 185 comments. The consultation statement, which hopefully you've been able to access through the document library link, provides summaries of all of the comments for both of those consultations. And in effect, it's how we've set about refining the SPD up to the final document you have. The main themes of this second consultation was summarised in your report at paragraph 3.5, and those sort of changes are set out in 3.6. These really were the main headlines, but if you look at the consultation statement, it sets out obviously far more specific and detailed comments that were received as part of that consultation. But due to their varying nature and content, we can't really cover them in a succinct manner this morning. Nevertheless, that consultation statement shows how every single comment was considered and responded to by the various steering group members. So since the close of that consultation, the steering group has spent that intervening period refining the document, taking account of the responses. We consider the final SPD to be well balanced in terms of its scope and content, and importantly, it's been written in a way that will support all of the participating authorities' coastal planning policies, which is no mean feat. For North Norfolk, though, the document will support the implementation of both the existing and the emerging local plan coastal policies in relation to development within the coastal change management area. And also it gives comprehensive advice regarding rollback and relocation proposals. Once adopted, the SPD will supersede the current council's development control guidance, which I think is 2009 document. So the report recommends the Coastal Adaptation SPD is adopted. again with the policy manager and the portfolio holder to be authorised to make any sort of minor amendments to the document. I'm aware that this is going through all of the participating authorities, working parties, committees and cabinets. So we are aware that there may be some kind of amendments that come forward through the committee. And obviously, if you spot anything, please do raise it. Because of the process and timeline, we're looking to adopt and publish the final version probably towards the second half of September. But yes, that's it for me.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you for the vote of confidence, delegating authority to me to make presentational or typographical amendments. That's yes, very brave. Right. Well, I think perhaps it's worth saying something. I don't know whether you can help me here, Ian, about the relationship between the local plan and the supplementary planning document in terms of how it feeds into application of policy. There's a subtle difference, isn't there? I think I've read somewhere. What?
Supplementary planning document is guidance. Basically, it's adding a little bit more detail to the policies and providing that guidance, not just to officers, but to those submitting applications and those looking to pursue development opportunities. It's telling you how the policy works.
Thank you. We've got one or two coastal members here, or people with interest in coastal matters. Councillor Blathwaite.
Thank you. Yes, I recommend this document and its proposal. Obviously, I better mention that I am the portfolio holder for coastal management. And I would have been attending this meeting because of this anyway, if I wasn't the reserve. I would just like to respectfully point out to members of the planning committee that we have already voted for this in principle at full council, and that implementing this in practice will call for hard decisions, and that the principles are very, very important, but the practical decisions will be even more important when they are taken at the planning committee. There is a planning application at the moment that has been referred for further review. That is a hard decision, but the application is totally within this principle. And I would ask that the planning committee look at that seriously and consider their implications of their decision. And apart from that, I recommend this document. Thank you.
Thank you. Recommendation noted. Any other members? Councillor Holiday.
My part of the coast is flooding rather than erosion. And I note that that's been clarified here.
Yeah.
And but we've taken more note of the sensitive environment, which is also something that's very important in our patch. So I'm pleased with that. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments on? I think it just remains to thank Caroline for all her work on this, and it's a major undertaking, isn't it, to engage with other areas and get everything consistent. So I'm going to move to a vote. I'm looking for a seconder. Anyone? Councillor Bull? Seconding. All those in favour? We're on a roll here, Lauren. It's making it very easy for you. It's more unanimity here. Thank you very much for that. So moving smartly on, we're really doing quite well today. We're motoring. To agenda item 10, which is the North Walsham Development Brief public consultation. Every public consultation is unique, I have to say. So it will be interesting to hear what we have on this one. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So the purpose of today is to seek your authority to consult on this emerging development brief that you can see before you, which you would all seen hopefully as well in the last week. We consider the brief to be far enough in the process to engage in consultation and to seek yours and the public's opinion before we as the council formally provide our feedback on this brief at a later date. And you have an opportunity, we'll do another working party related to that as well. Members will be updated with this feedback prior to making any recommendations or seeking any endorsements. As agreed at the last meeting, members have been given advance notice of the brief and are offered the opportunity to engage in a briefing presented by Mark Ashwell last week. Some members attended this briefing and the general feedback received is that they are content with the consultation to move forward. The purpose of today's meeting is not to go into the fine detail of the brief, but for us to present a light overview of what this document is proposing prior to seeking your approval to consulting on the brief. Before going any further, we want to highlight that this brief has been a collaboration between the promoters, ourselves and NCC Highways, who have expressed their approval towards the brief's highways proposals and have been involved in relevant discussions and implementation of their methodology. From our perspective in planning policy, we consider this brief to be policy compliant with the emerging allocation in our local plan, which is NW62-A, which you can view in our examination library. As Mark Ashwell referred to last week as well, with this brief, we plan to demonstrate to the inspector this large-scale development at North Walsham is achievable, and that a development brief must be prepared in advancement of the local plan's examination in the near future. If you haven't figured out, but now I'm saying brief a lot in this presentation. So page 1, so as you can see for you, there's the overview of the master plan for the site. It includes the entirety of the site, but also takes into account areas outside of developers' control, which is the area to the north and the other like grayed out area sort of centrally. Feedback from previous consultation by NNDC in May-June 2021 has been taken into account and was a success in helping to inform this brief. You can view the whole development brief in its entirety yourselves to see how they acknowledge this previous consultation, which they do refer to in the large documentation. This brief focuses on 3 themes of development, which is open space, community, and economy. If we go to the next page, please. Thank you. So as you can see from this one, again, there's another overview of the master plan for the site. However, this identifies the green spaces and the green infrastructure that's being implemented. So open space has been designed to become more linear in nature and acts as a soft edge to the development whilst also promoting active travel up and down the site. Weaver's Way has been incorporated into the green infrastructure of the overall development and enhanced to become a key feature of the site. The link road that forms the spine of this development is flanked by tree-lined avenues and footpath cycle paths that are built in separate to the road to enable better permeability by foot and cycle across the site and beyond. And this aligns with our requirements for dry-rams. In addition to open space, the development provides playing pitches, play areas for children that are dotted throughout the site, and allotments as well. In the centre of the site is the new school and a community hub that will consist of some employment provision, a multi-purpose plaza style space, and an elderly care facility, which creates sort of like a nexus point for the community. Next page, please. Thank you. This is sort of focusing on the railway bridge. So the link road, as mentioned before, it starts at Norwich Road to the south and passes through the centre of the site in its entirety, connects to Cromer Road to the north, and then further north beyond that to over the railway line, towards the railway line. It's important to note that on page 12 of Appendix 2 of your pack provided to you that part of this development includes access over the railway line to the north of the site to facilitate a further northern extension. However, it is considered that the benefits of this extension will not justify the high cost of the currently preferred scheme, which currently sits at about £20 million. So in light of this, the brief still does facilitate future delivery of the northernmost extension of the railway line and will enhance pedestrian and cycle connections to the industrial estate located there. And the local plan policy NW62-A still includes this requirement, and we as a council expect them to deliver this in the future. In addition, we have engaged with Norfolk County Council in the publication of their upcoming infrastructure delivery plan, which will now include a dedicated project for delivering this important piece of infrastructure. Next page, please. So the new link road will help direct traffic going into North Walsham to alleviate traffic pressures in that area. The new road will not remove HGV movements from Aylsham Road entirely, but it will significantly reduce it by redirecting those that need to access facilities in the centre, which equates to about a 50% reduction in HGV movements. This has all been modelled using bespoke traffic models, and has also been agreed to by NCC as well. The brief provides a number of off-site improvements, which have all been modelled and agreed to by Highways, which indicates that the overall impact of the development on the road network is neutral. The development's road network and off-site improvements are all designed to allow travel through the site to be easy and accessible, whilst also promoting active travel and public transport links. New bus exchanges are designed to provide direct links into North Walsham and the wider area. It will also provide off-site cycle link improvements to the railway station throughout the town and provide a new bus hub. Page 5, please. Next page, sorry. Thank you. So Aylsham Road. Aylsham Road has been modelled to account for pedestrian use, access and traffic improvements. There'll be traffic light controls which will be implemented, introducing a one-way use and a single carriageway, allowing for a widening of footpaths and forcing larger vehicles into the centre of the bridge for safety and better access. A new crossing and rounding of corner to allow greater depth of movement and direction of traffic. Improvements to Weavers Way don't just include integration into the wider green infrastructure for the site, but also include a widening of footpaths from 2.5 to 4 metres. In addition to the improvements to Aylsham Road, the existing Green Road will be redesigned with an improved access to the football club. Next page, please. So Colchester, the Colchester Junction has been modelled and agreed to by Highways. The main sort of crux of it really is that a parking bay will be removed to help alleviate congestion area issues, and bus stop improvements to help alleviate the pressures from parked cars in that immediate area. But as you can see on that map, there's also a lot of other considerations that have been taken into account as well. So really, in conclusion, there is a commitment to deliver the off-site improvements early, and as a result, there will be improvements to the current situation in the early phases of the development. All the requirements set out in the brief have been modelled, tested and agreed by Highways, which consider these to be necessary, appropriate and deliverable. NCC are supportive and confirm measures deliverable and will mitigate the effects of the development. Thank you. Any questions?
Councillor Heinrich.
Surprise, Chairman. I'm going to be surprisingly positive, I think. Having had a good 2.5 hours as developers and Officer Ashwell, along with Councillor Bull at North Walsham, where we've gone through this in very fine detail, the overall scheme, I think, is remarkably good for a development of this nature. They have listened to what we've asked for. My 3 village concept is there that I've always argued for. So 95% plus of the way there, as far as I'm concerned. We'll see what the public say. My one proviso, surprise, surprise, is the extension of the link road to the industrial estate. If I'm understanding it correctly from Mark Ashwell, the road will go as far as the railway bridge, which has its own benefits, and it opens up the old Marrick's land for development. So we have some very much needed economic development space there, which will become available quite quickly. I'm not convinced by some of the HGV flow figures. No, difficult to argue with the mass of statistics that have been offered to us, but if we're going to open up the area into the end of the industrial estate that's currently little used, then it must have better access, and the only way is to get that scheme fully completed. Now, I appreciate that the land is not owned by the consortium. We have no control, at least 5 landowners, I think, involved there, and a level of local objection that Councillor Shires has made me aware of. So it's not going to be easy, but that doesn't mean we abandon it. And what I'm just seeking is assurances that the aim of creating that link road through to industrial estate remains in the local plan. I see not, I'm happy with that then, and that we make best efforts to progress that over the timescale of the development as a whole. It's clearly not going to be something that can be done quickly, and probably not certainly in my time on this council. But I just need the assurances for the people of North Walsham that we are still actively pursuing that part of the road, and we'll do damnedest to get it at some point in the reasonably foreseeable future. Apart from that, I'm happy to propose acceptance of the recommendation.
Thank you. That's very helpful, and it's refreshing to hear you being positive.
Always positive.
As regards, yeah, I'm not saying you're not. But at this stage, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how we can govern the development of the link road in terms of when it occurs. I don't suppose that there's any possibility of it sort of going in pretty early I mean, this will be developed in phases. It's such a massive proposal that it's conceivable that elements of this scheme will still be outstanding by the time we get to the next local plan. So I'm not sure whether there's anything that can be done to. I don't know whether you've had discussions on this or not.
Thank you, Chairman. No, as I see it, this is going to be the most difficult part of the whole development. Certainly there are issues over the phasing of the Norwich Road to Cromer Road link, which is clearly the priority. That alone will shift a fair bit of traffic out of the narrow streets around the periphery of the town centre and keep some out of the town centre itself. So I would wish to see that section developed as soon as possible, until we see the detailed timescales of the proposals. That's going to be difficult. But that, to me, is, in terms of highways, is the priority, to get that section, Norwich Road to Cromer Road, in place. Second stage would be get the railway to open up the industrial land. We need to carry on looking at how, with highways, with landowners, how we can get that final link into the back of the industrial estate. And I appreciate that's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick. But we have to keep that on the table. We have to keep the negotiations going. Okay.
Any other comments? Councillor Hankins, then Councillor Dixon. So, my apologies. Yes, certainly.
My understanding, Mr. Chairman, is that there is a major problem in North Walsham with the capacity of schooling. This particularly came to the fore when I was involved in the granting of the joint application for the Older Country Park, and a limit was put on the planning permission approval to the extent that the new occupants had to be at least 50 years of age, so that in fact they did not provide a problem for the local school. It says here the exact delivery of the school will be prepared and coordinated with the Education Authority, two different authorities. right? From my experience in a number of counties, there has always been a coordination facility, but a lack of delivery. And I'm sure when it comes to the actual consultation, that will come to the fore pretty clearly. Because there is a perception that coordination does not necessarily mean delivery. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I can well understand the point that you're making. We've had this issue in other contexts within the district, most notably Holt.
Just,
Yeah.
I'll just respond onto that. The last figures I saw there is significant capacity at the secondary school. It's under no more like 2/3 full. There is some capacity in the existing 2 primary schools. I think if we're going to get many objections, it's more to do with health services. Thank you.
Yes, that's another area of concern, isn't it? I presume there will be section 106 funding for the school provision, and usually isn't there, on a scheme of this type?
Yes, as an application is developed, obviously there will be the usual discussions on viability and appropriate contributions. What we're saying here is that as the county are committing to a new school, but the delivery of it will have to go through their process. And as more detail on the phasing of this application and school places is provided, they will firm up their position. And you're right, that was a very similar process to what happened at Holton, so that moves through the system.
Yes, Councillor Holiday.
Thank you. That's very kind. I wanted to talk about the healthcare provision, because if you've got 6,000 new people, that's 3 doctors and 2 nurses. And are they going to be employed, and where are they going to be employed? 85% of the population lives within 20-minute walk of their GP. So these guys are going to be quite long. I'm not exactly sure how long it takes to walk to the GP practices, but it looks like quite a long way to me. And also the bus transport east to west doesn't look as good as the bus transport north to south. And I'm just thinking that certainly for the more elderly and those without transport, it's going to be quite difficult to get into the 2 main GP surgeries. And have they got capacity to take on the extra GPs? And has this been thought through? And again, the timing of it needs to be earlier rather than later. Thank you very much.
Well, we are looking at the health protocol, aren't we? Which does, but it's only a protocol. Yeah, we know there isn't a marriage made in heaven between health provision, perhaps even education provision, and the planning process. But you know, we have to work within the constraints of planning procedure. I'm sure that officers wish it was otherwise. It was, you know, more seamless than it is. But that's unfortunately what we have to work with. Councillor Bull.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo what Councillor Heinrich said. It was a very informative meeting we had with the planning. I really have, as I used to, most of you know, I used to be chair of North Walsham Council. I've been on North Walsham Town Council for 12 years. I'm not anymore, but I was. And they have taken on board virtually everything that was said at the time in the consultations and what was desired by the local town council and individuals. And again, 90% is pretty there much. I'll echo again what Paul said about the link road, but on the into the industrial estate. But I did notice, and I have raised it earlier with the gentleman behind us, that the package of land does actually go both sides of that railway bridge that is being developed. And whilst I appreciate that the cost of the bridge is absolutely extortionate once you start getting Network Rail involved, etc. In order to go further on from what Paul said, if we manage to do the highway either side of that, regardless of the bridge, not only does it start the impetus to continue that road, because it's already been built. It just doesn't stop this side of the bridge, it goes the other side of the bridge. Will go a long way to placating the people in North Walsham, the residents of North Walsham. I know it's one of the major things they like. And again, as Councillor Halliday also mentioned, the ones that have been mentioned to me are the worry about provision for the health and that those are the two main issues. But I would, commend the plans that have been there and recommend them. They certainly have taken on board what we said, the village approach and making it nice, soft and access and all of that. And a lot of work has obviously gone into it. And I quite happily, like I say, 90% there, recommend on that. So, thank you.
Good, that's good. Can we just put a little bit of flesh on the bones of how this is going to proceed in terms of, dates when the consultation starts, and perhaps, whatever goes out can be put in the library for members to see? Is that possible? Yeah.
Yes, I think in terms of dates, I don't think there is a date fixed yet. There are some commitments for member briefings which have taken place in this council, but also county councils are briefing their own members, and also Broadland councillors as well are receiving a briefing as well. And the desire is that those take place prior to this going out, so everyone is informed. Those are actively being arranged at the county council level. The developers, I think, taken on board the feedback that August is not a good time to go out, so I'm not expecting it till at least September, and when all the material is brought together. But yes, I would assume we can produce hard copies as well and put in the members briefing room.
Good. Right. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was on your list to speak. I'd like to make 4 points. The first one is that I support this scheme in principle. I believe it is the right solution to a raft of problems. My second point is that I believe these consultation documents are probably as good as it's going to get in terms of readiness and fitness for public consultation. My third point is that I am aware of some major challenges. And most of those, I think, revolve around issues in North Walsham, and I'm sure North Walsham members will properly and adequately represent those. So I won't dwell on those. I will, however, dwell on one which I think is probably off many people's radar, and that is the impact of the traffic through Coltishall and Horsted, and the impact on the B1150. But particularly those two villages. And having seen and looked in detail at the mitigation measures which are proposed, I have to say, at this early stage, I consider them to be woefully inadequate. I'll go back a stage still further, actually, and say I am not convinced that the scale of the problem has been properly assessed. So in terms of this consultation process, I would like to see those two villages, and I don't represent them, but although my county council division butts up against and goes almost into Coltishall. But I really do believe that we need to move those two villages a bit closer, what I would call to the centre and focus of this consultation. Quite how we do that, I'm not absolutely sure, but I would like to see something of that kind, because I do anticipate that there will be a very voluble protest from very concerned residents and businesses with regard to how this will work in the future. So I will put that marker down, and I just would like to see that perhaps brought more, as I said, to the centre of our considerations in this consultation. Thank you.
Councillor Blathwaite.
Yeah, I'd just like to support councillor Dixon. I too believe that the bridge at Coltishall, the impact of the scheme on that bridge will be immense, and an area which is already a problem will become a major issue. And I think we have to have consultation with Broadland District Council and also the Broads Authority. Thank you.
What occurred to me when I saw the details on this was that it was sort of such a minor adjustment to the road layout in Coltishall that why wasn't it thought of previously? We've sort of we've been limping along for month after month after month, thinking how are we going to resolve this traffic impact in Coltishall. It was one of the the things that was holding the scheme back, and now we're told it's a relatively minor adjustment, and it does make you think whether such a minor adjustment will be sufficient. It's almost, we were expecting something much more grandiose, if you like, in Coltishall, and then we're now being presented with to resolve that problem. So I don't know if officers have got anything that they can feed in here.
I can add, you're moving into the detailed response to the consultation, and I'm sure when we bring the feedback back, this will be a feature of it, and there will be that opportunity for a further discussion. I'm not the lead officer here, and obviously Matt is very closely associated with his work, but I'm sure Mark will bring back the evidence and studies that have been carried out on the road network. I know it's taken time for those studies to be done, but the methodology of them has been agreed. It's not just a promotional methodology from a developer that's been agreed with the county council, and the survey work and the improvements which they are recommending, they are endorsing, as A, they are required, but B, they will deliver betterment in the early stages of the scheme, and overall the impacts on the wider network would be neutral. There are some slides in the development brief and also in the slide pack that was presented, which, although they're quite hard to see, they give a position prior to mitigation and then after mitigation, with the darker, I think it's dark blue, isn't it, Matt? We'd show you is the congestion on the road network, and when you apply the mitigation, that congestion is removed, and that actually incorporates the growth forecasted as well. But as I say, that's coming into the detail of the authority's response to this consultation, which I'm sure that will be worked up with Mark and Matthew at a later stage.
Councillor Harry?
Yeah, I was just going to refer to those maps, having had the full presentation from the highways expert. Their modelling looks good, and it seems to solve the problem. Whether that is reality is another matter, and I'm pretty sure that the perception of the people of Coltishall will not be the same as those maps. So it's been an interesting sell.
I don't know if there'll be any other benefit for Coulty Shoal in addition to the reorganised road layout. People in Coulty Shoal looking forward to some kind of public realm benefit on the back of this, and will the cost of the works in Coulty Shoal be borne by developers through a planning agreement?
It's part of the whole package. Is that any application coming forward will have to address the off-site mitigations necessary. And as it's been put forward, that there is agreement that there's betterment and overall neutrality in those impacts. And that will come forward through the proposal. And the intention is that, yes, they are paid for through the development of the North Walsham scheme. There are no proposals for like open space improvements out there, or off-site improvements further afield. They are simply to looking at the wider network within North Walsham and also our area.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to come back on that. I hadn't intended kind of going down to this level of detail in my representation, but I think Councillor Blathwaite has triggered me into doing that because he's mentioned one of 4 points in the village, and those pair of villages. The bridge is one, there's no two ways about it. The 2 that have already been the subject of some examination and mitigation, but there's also a section of road, which for those of you who know it fairly well will know the approach road from the old railway bridge into the centre of the village is extremely narrow. It's very winding as well. And, I don't see how a scheme of this kind can come forward into the public consultation without there being some mention and consideration being given to all of those 4 points. And I've said enough about the 2 that there has been mitigation proposed for. I believe it to be woefully adequate. And to say nothing about the other 2 points, I'm absolutely amazed and disappointed. And I imagine that will be something that will come from the public consultation. Thank you.
So that, yes, the public consultation will go out to people in Coulty Shoal as well, I assume. We're not talking about just
It'll be
within the boundaries of North Walsham Road.
No, it'll be a public consultation. Anybody can respond.
Yeah, right, okay. Well, I'm guessing that there is, subject to those concerns, overall support for the brief going out to public consultation. That's essentially what we're here to do today. It's not so much debating, although we have covered concerns, that there will be an opportunity in the future after the public consultation to examine that more forensically, if I can put it that way. So we're by no means ignoring it, I assure you. Well, I won't be doing anyway. So if I can have a confirmation of your proposing it, Councillor Heinrich, Councillor Bull seconding it. All those in favour? It's a full house of unanimity today. That's remarkable. Thank you very much for that, and thank you for all your work. An immense amount of work going into it. Right, so I think item 11, exclusion of press and public. Don't really have any, do we? No, they're not being here today. So thank you very much, members, for your attendance at 11:45.